Okay, this screencast is going to walk you through the first lab for JSDC4. To start, you're going to fork the repository. It's really important that you fork it so that you can submit it via pull request. And then once you've forked it, you're going to clone it down to your computer. And you're going to clone it with this link. And make sure you clone it into a completely separate folder from your coursework. You don't want it to be inside your class repository because the two repositories might conflict with each other. So you want it to be in a completely separate folder. Once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and open it up in Atom or Sublime Text, and we'll get started. So let's see. Let's go ahead and read through this and then figure out what we're going to do. So the lab is to build a command line version of the card game of War. War is a card game played between two players. A deck of cards is shuffled and divided between the two players. Each player gets a half. And then each player, the game happens in rounds. And in each round, every player is going to take the top card from their deck or their hand and put it down. And whoever draws the higher card, the card with the higher score, wins that round and takes both cards and puts them at the bottom of their deck. If the two players draw cards that have the same score, so they tie, then war is declared. And they're going to keep drawing cards until somebody wins. And then when someone wins, they take all the cards that have been drawn and add those to their deck. The game continues like this until somebody wins. And we know that somebody has won when a player runs out of cards. So when they have no more cards left, they have lost the game. At a minimum for our lab, we want to run an index.js file with Node, and then get two usernames using this library prompt down here, and then start gameplay and continue until somebody wins. Each round, we should print out what the current round number is, what cards each player drew, who won the round, and then how many cards each player now has. If it's a tie, we'll print war, and then we'll start drawing cards until somebody wins. All right? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the command line, and because we're going to use npm to manage our packages for this project, I'm going to go ahead and run npm init, and I'm going to pass the -y flag. -y is just going to accept all the defaults, and it's going to create my package.json file with all of the defaults here. So go ahead and close that, and then I'll go ahead and install prompt now so that I don't have to do it later. And that's done. And then let's see, I need to create an index.js file. This is where most of our game is going to live. So let's see, I'm going to come here, and I'm actually not even going to start coding yet. I'm just going to start by thinking about this problem sum. So I know that I will need to create a deck of cards so that the players can play with those cards. And I'll need to create a player. And both of those, we're going to have a lot of functionality and data around those two. So I'm going to embody all that in a couple of classes. So we'll create a player class and a deck class. And just like in the previous assignments, my deck class is going to be based on a card class. And let's see, so this card class is going to have a suit and a rank, and what else do we need for our card class? I guess we'll need a score so that we know between two cards which one has a higher value. And then just like in the previous exercises we did, we'll give each one a title so that we can print out which card was played, and that's a little bit easier. So a deck, if you think about a deck is really just a collection of cards. So we're going to have this array of cards. It's going to be all the cards for our deck. We're going to need some way to create that collection of cards. So we'll have a create deck function. And then the other thing we'll need to do with our deck is, well, we'll create a new deck, and then we'll deal half of it out to each player. So we'll need some function for handling that. So something like deal hand. So finally here for our player, each player is going to have a username, which is going to how we're going to identify them. And then each player is also going to need their own hand of cards. So we'll call that hand. And then let's see. So we're playing. We have our player that represents us, and we have a hand of cards. We're going to need some way to play a card, and then some way to represent the cards that we've just played. So I'm going to say that player is also going to have a current card, an array, and we'll talk about why it's going to be an array later. And then I'm going to say we're going to have a draw card function, which is going to take whatever card is at the top of our hand and add it to this current cards array. So, all right. So I'll go ahead and build these out, and I'm going to do it in separate files. So I'm going to make a folder called models, and then within models I'm going to touch card, deck, and player.js. And then I'll go back to Atom, and let's start with our card class. So we'll come into card.js, and we'll paste these requirements here, and we'll get started with these. So the first thing we do is create our card class, and we're going to want to use this outside of this file. So we'll just go ahead and module.exports is equal to card, just like we talked about in class. Now, just like the previous exercises, we're going to want to pass in the suit and rank of a card every time we're creating a new card using our class. And then we'll create a card by assigning its suit to whatever suit we pass in, and same with rank. And then this title is going to be equal to the rank plus the string like this, and then the suit. So that if we were to come down here and say var test card is equal to new card queen, then what we would get for our title is something like Queen of Hearts. And then the last thing we need here is the score. And the score, we're going to want to look up the score of a card based on its rank. And I think the best way to do that is with an object. So we'll have a rank scores object, which is going to have ace equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there we go. There we go. And we can do rank score and pass in the rank, and we'll get our score back. So that does it for our card class. We have the suit, we have the rank, we're building our title based off both of those, and then we're getting the score from this rank score object by passing in the current rank. So let's go ahead and see that in action. I'll console.log this test card here. And node model card. There we go. It worked. So that pretty much does it for our card. Let's do our deck next. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a function deck, and we're going to want to use this one as well. So module.exports is equal to deck. And okay, so the first thing we're going to need is the cards that make up this deck. And then we're going to need some function to actually build that, just like we did before. And what this is going to do, or let us do, is something like var test deck equals new deck, and then test deck dot create deck, and then console.log testDeck.cards.length, and what we should get is 52. But there's a better way that we can do this, and that is if we create a deck here, we don't actually have a deck of cards yet. We have to call this function first, and that function is going to be something like this dot create deck equals function. And this is where we're going to create a deck. Well, instead of doing that, within here we can create an array, which is going to be equal to, well, let's just call it cards for now. This is going to be the deck of cards that we're eventually going to create. And we can just return that array. So then we don't need to attach this to our deck. Instead, what we can do is just call it here. This.cards is equal to create deck, and then when we run new deck, this.cards will automatically be populated. So, alright, cool. So let's see that. So what we need here are our suits, right? Hearts, clubs, spades, and diamonds, and then our ranks, which is ace, 1, oops. There we go. And to create our deck, we're going to loop through these twice, loop over both of these, just like we did in the previous exercise. So for var j equals 0, j is less than ranks.length, j plus plus. Then we're going to take this cards array and push in an instance of our card class, which is going to be suits and ranks. And of course, in order for this to work, we actually need to bring in that card class. So var card is equal to require ./card. And now this all should work. So let's go ahead and test it out. We're going to call node model deck, and we get 56, which is not what we expected. Why did we get 56? That's interesting. Why did we get 56? This.cards is equal to create deck. Let's console log that, and let's come here and comment that out. And if we do this, looks like it's all working. Oh, it's because I have this 1 in here. And we don't need that because ace is 1. So now I don't need the whole deck. But if we do that, perfect. Okay, we get 52. All right, so let's see. We're not quite done with our deck class. We've got our cards and we've got a create deck function. Oops, excuse me. The next thing we need is this deal hand function. So this dot deal hand is going to be equal to a function that we'll call. And so here I should be able to var test hand is equal to test deck dot deal hand, and then console log the length of that, and I should get an array that's going to be half of 52 because I'm going to deal half the deck. So it should be equal to 26. So what we can do is let's create an array. So var hand to return or something like that, that we're going to return at the end of this function. And what we're going to do with this array is go through, do a for loop, so 26 times, 26 loops, and in each loop we're going to pull a random item out of our cards array here attached to the deck. So we'll do for, we'll say less than 26, and in here we're going to create we're going to get a random card. So what we want to do is pull a random card from the array and actually remove it from this dot cards. And the method that we use to do that is splice. So first we need to get a random index, so var random index, that's going to be equal to the length, or less than the length of our cards array. So we'll math.floor and then math.random times this.cards.length. This is going to give us a random number that is less than the current length or the current number of cards inside of our array. And then let's see, so var random card is going to be equal to this.cards.splice random index, and we want to take one card from it. And then what we'll do is push that random card into our hand to return array. Now this will almost work. This dot splice is going to remove the item from this dot cards at whatever index this ends up being, and it's going to remove one item, so only the item at this index. But what this dot splice is going to return, this dot splice is a function, it's going to return an array of cards, even though we're only taking one card out. So what we're going to do is get the first item from that array. Since we're only taking one card out, it'll also be the only item from our array. And so when we do this, we'll have 26 cards, but if we actually console log it, it will be 26 instances of our card class pulled from the this.cards array. And one can see that now. Yeah. So there we go. So you see we get 26 cards, and each one is a card. If we delete that, you'll see that we get each one is now inside of an array. So we'll bring that back. So that pretty much does it for now for our deck class. The last thing that we need to create is our player class. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and we'll paste it here, and we can get started on our player class. So first things first, we're going to do function player, and then we will module.exports is equal to player. Now our player is going to need a username. That's the first thing that we'll need. And we'll assign that username to our player as we would any other property. The next thing our player is going to need is a hand. And this is going to be their hand of cards. So it'll be an array of the cards that get dealt to them by our deck class deal hand method. And then we'll need a way to show what cards we've just drawn. So when we're in the middle of a round, we'll draw a card. We'll need a way of showing what card we've just drawn. And we're going to use an array so that if we both draw cards and they have the same score, I can call draw card again and keep all of these cards in the same sort of data, stored in the same variable, which is going to be this .current cards. So let's see. Then the last thing we need here is this .draw card, which is going to be a function, and it's going to take the first card in my hand and add it to this .current cards. So what we want is to get a card from this .hand. And there's an array method that we can use to get the first item from an array, and that is shift. So if we call this .hand.shift, it will remove the first item from this .hand, and here we're storing it into a variable. Unlike splice, shift is going to return the item itself, not an array, so we don't need to do anything like this. We can just do this .hand.shift, and then this .current cards.push that card. All right. So I think we're good to go for our player class. So here we are in our index.js file, and now what we want to do is work out the logic for our game. And the first thing we're going to want to do is, let's say, first we're going to want to create a deck, create 2 players, and then deal each player a hand. Once we've done that, we're going to want to start the game, which we do by creating a loop. And we're going to have to think about what kind of loop we're going to want to use, but it's going to have to be one that we can control the conditions under which the loop will eventually break, so that it will continue on forever until we decide that we want it to stop. So, okay. So, create a loop for the game to continue until a player has won. So then, while no one has won the game yet, we're going to want to have each player draw a card, right? And then we're going to want to show that card. Print out its title to the console maybe. And then what we want to do is somehow we're going to want to check who won the round. Then whoever wins, we're going to want to have them collect both of those cards. So winner collects cards. And then we'll want to continue on to the next round. So, or actually here we'll want to check to see if someone has won. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So first we need our deck, right? So that we can create our deck. So var deck is equal to require deck. And down here I can do var game deck is equal to new deck. And then now I need my player class so that I can do something like var first player is equal to new player, and we'll call them Zach, and var second player is equal to new player, and we'll call them Christine. Okay. So now I have my game deck and I have my two players. What I need to do then is first player dot hand is equal to game deck dot deal hand, and I want to do the same for the second player. So I've taken care of step one. I've created a deck, created two players, and I've dealt each player a hand. Now I need to start the game. And so I've thought a little bit about this loop, and I think we're going to want to use a while loop. And the reason for that is we can set a variable here, like var no one has won yet equal to true, and then continue for as long as that variable is set to true. And then down here at the end of our loop, check to see if someone has won yet. And if they have, then we'll set no one has won yet equal to false. And then our loop will stop. So, okay. So that kind of takes care of this step here. We'll have to come back and figure out if someone's won once we have sort of set this up. So we can continue on to step 4 here. So we're going to start by having each player draw a card. So something like player first player dot draw card and second player dot draw card. And now each player should have a card in their current cards array. So what we can do is check to see what the score of that card is. So first let's check to see if they tied, so if they are in war. And what we'll do is first player dot current cards. We'll check the first one and get its score. If that is equal to second player dot current cards, the first one, score, then what we have is a tie, so war. Otherwise, so else if, first player dot current cards O dot score is greater than second player, then player 1 has won. Log first player dot username has won the round. if they didn't tie and the first player's card doesn't have a higher score, then we can assume that the second player won. So console.log second player.username has won the round. Okay. So because I'm setting this to false immediately here, this is going to run just once if I run the file now. And that'll be good, at least as far as letting us test it. So I can run node index.js and I get an error. And the reason I get an error is because my det class is actually in the models folder. So models, there we go. So if I run this again, boom, we tied. And if I run it again, Christine won. And if we run it again, Christine won again. And Christine wins a lot. There we go. Okay, so we'll stop there. So this is great, but we can't see what round we're on, which right now isn't such a big deal because we only have one round. And we can't see what cards each of us has played. So let's do something like var round is equal to 0. And then down here, we'll increment the round. And then here, let's console.log. Let's start by console logging a bunch of these, and that will serve as a separator between each round in the terminal. And then we'll console.log round and then round. And then we'll console.log first player dot username drew the plus first player dot current cards dot title. And I'm just going to duplicate this line and then replace first player with second player and save the file. And if I run this, I think you'll see kind of what we've built together here. So run this, boom. So we've got our separator, our round number. Zach drew the queen of clubs. Christine drew the 7 of spades. Zach has won this round. If we run it again, again, and again, you can see all of these. So you can see them all together if we do something like if round is equal to 5, then we'll set no one has won yet to false, which will effectively end our game, and then we'll go to 5 rounds. Cool. So now we need the logic of, now that we know who's winning each round, we need the logic of actually taking those cards. So let's see. Here, what I want to do is if I win, I want to take the card that's in my current cards array and in Christine's current cards array and add those to the end of my hand. And effectively what we're doing is we're taking those 3 arrays and we're concatenating them together. So what I'm going to do is say first player dot hand is going to be equal to first player dot hand dot concat, and I'm going to pass in first player dot current cards, and I'm going to pass in second player dot current cards. This is going to take the hand array, which represents all the cards that have not been played, the cards that have been played on both my player and the other player, and create a third array, which we're then going to assign or reassign to my hand. After that, what we want to do is first player dot current cards is equal to an empty array, because there's still a card inside this current cards array, and we don't want to keep re-adding it every round. So we'll just remove it, which we can do by just reassigning an empty array into that variable. And we want to do the same thing with the second player. Okay. So now down here, for when Christine wins, we're going to want to do the same thing. We're going to want to take the second player's hand and create an array based on the second player's hand, the first player's current cards, and the second player's current cards. And then we're going to want to reassign those to empty arrays. So let's run this and see how it works. Well, so I guess we don't have a way of seeing how it works yet. So let's add that. Up here, let's say console.log first player dot hand dot length, and we'll do the same with the second player. And let's add a message here at the beginning so that we can see who has how many cards. We'll do first player dot username plus has plus, there we go, and second player dot username plus has plus. And now if we run this, each round we'll see how many cards each player has. So if we run it, boom. And let's see, so there's something wrong because in both cases I'm losing a card, or both players are losing a card. Oh wait, it's because I tied all 5 times. But I am still losing those cards. Right, 25, 26, 24, 25, 25. So let's see. Why is that happening? It's very strange. Oh, I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that we're doing that up there instead of down here. Let's see what that does. Nope, I'm still losing cards somewhere. So, okay, let's see. So if we tie, then we're going to, I wonder if it's because we haven't built out the logic for what happens when we tie. So if we tie, let's push the card back into the hand for now. So first player dot hand dot push, first player dot current cards, and we'll do the same with second player. Oops. Yep, that appears to be working. So I think we might be able to run it at this point, and see if somebody wins. So what we're going to want to do here is create an if-else statement that's going to test to see if somebody has won. So if first player dot hand dot length is equal to 0, then we'll console.log that the second player has won. So we'll want to set no one has won yet equal to false. So how do you spell false? There we go. And then here we want to do an if-else if that tests if second player has no more cards left. And if that's the case, then our first player has won. So no one has won yet is going to be equal to false. Otherwise, we'll just keep going. So let's see. Hopefully this doesn't run into some crazy loop that never ends. And it looks like it is. Cool. So we'll have to figure out what's going on there. But let's see. Node 30 plus 22. Huh. Oh, wow. That was in war for a long time here. Oh. The reason for that is because if I got into war, then I never got out of war because we were only ever testing the first card. So we're going to say first player dot current cards is equal to an empty array, and the same with second player. Whoops. And let's see, eventually someone should win here, but it looks like that's not happening either. So let's see. Just going back and forth. So let's see, why is that? I'm drawing a card and showing that card's title. If our cards are the same, then war is declared. And we're just going to push our cards back into our hands and then empty our current cards. If first player current cards score, so if my score is greater than their score, I've won, and I'm going to take all of the cards and push them into my hand. Okay. So what I'm going to do is think about this for a little bit and start to refactor a little bit because we've got a lot of repetition here. So there are a couple of other things I want to add to my player class now that I've been at this for a minute. The first is so our current card is going to have whatever cards we've drawn. So rather than have to do something like this every time, it would be great if I could just call a method like show current card. And what this is going to do is return this dot current cards, whatever the last item in this array is. And the reason we want the last item is on cases where we have where we've tied, then we're going to keep adding cards, we keep drawing cards and pushing those to the end of this array. We're going to want to always be checking the last one. So then what we can do is actually this dot show current card title. It's going to be equal to a function where we're going to do something like var current card is equal to this dot show current card, and we'll return current card dot title. So return current card dot title. And so here we can just do show current card title, and we can do the same thing here. So that only makes that a little bit cleaner. I think maybe we could really use the same idea to make this a little cleaner though. So this dot show current card score, and that's going to be equal to a function where we're going to get the current card, and we're going to return the current card's score. So now we can copy this and just do this and this. And okay, so what we're doing here, this I think we can pull into a method here as well. So we'll create something like this dot collect winnings, which is going to be equal to a function, and this is going to do everything we're doing here, but we'll need to pass in the other player so that we can work with that. And what we'll do is set this dot hand equal to this dot hand dot concat with this dot current cards and other player dot current cards, and then we'll have to set this dot current cards to an empty array and other player dot current cards to an empty array, just like we are here. But what this means is now, rather than having to type this out twice here, we can just do something like first player dot collect winnings and pass in the second player, and then delete all of this. And here, do something like second player dot collect winnings and pass in the first player. Great. So we'll save all of that, and let's come back to the terminal here, and let's give this a run. And yeah, we're still getting this issue. So let's see, we should still have 52 cards, which it looks like we do. So here, what we can do here, actually, the way that I expected this to work, or that I would have expected this to work, is if these are tied, we've already drawn the card, which means we've already taken the card from our hand and put it into our current cards. So this is going to loop, which means that if we're not going to do anything else, we can just continue around to the next time, draw a card again, and then check those. So let's see how this runs now. Oops. There we go. And looks like it worked. Christine won after 1,000 rounds. We run it again. Oh, only 315 that time. So great. So, okay. So each player draws a card. We show that card. Then we check who won the round. The winner collects all of the cards, and then we check to see if someone has won. So the last thing we need to do is implement prompt here. But before I do that, I've got a lot going on here that I think I could maybe abstract out. So I'll delete this. What I'm going to do is come back to the terminal, and I'm going to create a game class. And this game class is going to be in charge of, well, running the game. So I'll do something like function game, and then module.exports game. And let's see. So this game class is, well, first off, it's going to rely on deck and player, just like I am here. So I'll go ahead and pull those into this file. We're going to want to pass 2 players to our game. Well, are we? I don't know. Yeah, we're going to want to pass our 2 players because we're going to want to create our players here. And what we're going to want to do is something like var game of war equals require models game. And then we can do something like var game equals new game of war. And then what I'll want is something like game.start. And start is going to be a function here that's not how we declare functions, equals function. It was close. This is where all this game logic is going to live. So I think I can actually just copy, or rather cut, all of this and put it here. And we should be good to go, except that I'll need, so var player equals require, oh no, I don't need this because I've copied it here. So let's see. This should work, but let's find out. Exports equals game. If I run it, can't find models deck. So what I did here is these paths need to be relative. So I need to delete out that, and I should be good now. Yep, and I am. Christine won again. Cool. So what this is going to let me do is start working with prompt, and this file will be nice and clean. There won't be too much going on here. So to get prompt in here, I'm going to do var prompt is equal to require prompt. If you're using npm, you don't need to give it an actual path to prompt here. We can just pass in the name of the module that we want to use, and npm will figure it out. I am going to want player here so that I can create these players here. What I'll want to do is, let's look at the documentation for npm prompt. I don't know if I have it. There it is. So it comes with this really nice example here on how to use it. So the first thing we're going to do is call this start method. So we'll come back here, and now that we've required prompt, we can do something like prompt.start, just like it says there. And then here in this example, we're getting 2 properties, the username and then the email. And then it looks like we're calling a function, and this function has an error, that's what ERR stands for, and a result. And if we look inside of our function, it looks like we're saying that the username is going to be equal to result.username, and email is going to be equal to result.email. So username is going to be result.username, and email is going to be result.email. So maybe what I can do is something like prompt.get player1 username and player2 username. Pass in that function, which takes error and result. And then here I'll have something like result.player1 username, which maybe I can use like var player1 equals new player and pass that in. And then I'll do the same thing with player2. And now I should have my 2 players. So then I can bring this up here so that I'm creating a new instance of my game class and starting that game. But I'll want to pass in player 1 and player 2 and then start the game. So to make sure I'm actually using those, all I have to do is delete these. And I should be good. So yeah, I should be good. Let's give it a shot just to make sure, and we'll run node index.js. So it looks like prompt is working. We'll say Zach, and we'll say Christine, and yeah, look, wow. So Christine won again, obviously, after 305 rounds, and we are all good to go. So now that I've finished this, what I'm going to do is come back to the terminal and run a git status to see all the files that I created. I'm going to add all of these. So git add period, and then git commit, passing in the message, finish the lab. Huzzah. Woo! And it adds a lot of stuff. So now I can git push origin master, and that will push everything up to my fork, so I can come back to my fork, come back here, and make a pull request. So that should take care of the lab. So that's the lab. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to reach out to me and ask me questions about the screencast or the lab. This is one way of solving it. It's not the only way. So if you did something that was a little different, don't worry about that. So long as it works and it meets the minimum requirements, you should be good. I hope you enjoyed the screencast. If you have any feedback on it, please reach out to me. I would really appreciate that. And thank you for watching.